Every piece of jewelry I had ever owned vanished overnight. The next morning, my husband's sister walked in, covered in gold, wearing a smug smile. "They look better on me," she said casually. My husband chuckled and replied, "Consider it a gift." Without a word, I reached into my pocket and handed him a receipt. His expression froze as he read the fine print. I never thought I'd be sharing this, but here we are. I'm a 35-year-old woman, and I've been married to David, who's 38, for 10 years. We live in a cozy suburban home just outside Chicago. David's sister, Olivia, 32, has always been a bit unpredictable, but I never imagined things would go this far. Over the years, I had built a small yet meaningful jewelry collection. Each piece carried sentimental value: a pearl necklace from my grandmother, sapphire earrings gifted by David on our 5th anniversary, and a gold bracelet I bought with my first paycheck. These weren't just accessories to me, they were memory. Olivia always showed an interest in my jewelry. Whenever she visited, she'd admire the collection, and often asked to try things on. At first, I didn't mind. It felt like harmless curiosity. But over time, her comments started making me uncomfortable. She'd say things like, "This would look amazing on me," or "If you ever get tired of this, let me know." I brushed it off, not wanting to stir up tension. A few months ago, after going through a tough breakup, Olivia moved back to Chicago. Being the supportive brother he is, David offered her our guest room, until she could get back on her feet. I was hesitant but agreed, hoping it would only be temporary. From the start, the atmosphere was tense. Olivia treated our home more like a hotel, rarely helping out, and often crossing boundaries. She'd borrow my clothes without asking, leave messes for me to clean up, and invite friends over without letting us know. David would dismiss my concerns, saying, "She's having a hard time. Let's give her some space." One evening, I noticed my jewelry box slightly open. When I checked, I realized a pair of diamond studs was missing. I searched everywhere but couldn't find them. When I asked Olivia, she casually shrugged and said, "Maybe you misplaced them." David echoed her words, suggesting I might have just forgotten where I put them. I felt like I was being gaslit, but against my better judgment, I let it go. A week later, I was preparing for a work event, and planned to wear my pearl necklace, only to discover it was gone. Panic set in as I checked and realized several other pieces were missing too. I confronted David, but he still wasn't convinced. Feeling helpless, I decided to take action. I purchased a small, discreet security camera, and installed it in our bedroom, aimed directly at my jewelry box. I felt uneasy about invading our privacy, but I needed answers. 2 days later, while at work, I received a motion alert from the camera. I logged in remotely, and watched in shock as Olivia walked into our bedroom, opened my jewelry box, and began rummaging through it. She tried on several pieces and pocketed a few before leaving the room. My heart was pounding. I left work early and confronted her. I showed her the footage, expecting at least an apology if not regret. But instead, she smirked and said, "They look better on me anyway." I was speechless. When David got home, I showed him the footage too. To my disbelief, he laughed and said, "Consider it a gift, she's family." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Feeling completely betrayed, I reached out to a lawyer friend for advice. She explained that in Illinois, theft, even within families, is still considered a criminal offense. She advised me to document everything, and think seriously about pressing charges. That night, I packed a bag and stayed at a friend's place. I needed time to clear my head. David called and texted, but I couldn't bring myself to reply. My trust had been completely shattered. The next morning, I went back home to gather more of my belongings. Olivia was there, lounging on the couch, boldly wearing my missing pearl necklace, and the diamond studs. Seeing her so openly flaunting what wasn't hers lit a fire inside me. In that moment, I knew I wasn't going to let this slide. I started gathering all the evidence, camera footage, receipts for the missing jewelry, and every message exchanged with David and Olivia about the item. I carefully documented every occasion I spotted Olivia wearing something of mine, snapping photos when she wasn't paying attention. I also reached out to mutual friends and family, subtly asking if Olivia had recently shown off any new jewelry. Several people confirmed it, even mentioning how she had proudly talked about her upgraded collection. That only strengthened my case. Once I had everything organized, I scheduled a meeting with my lawyer friend to discuss the next step. I was determined to reclaim my belongings and make sure Olivia faced the consequences of her actions. The following day, I filed a police report. I brought everything with me: receipts, screenshots from the security footage, even printed out texts where Olivia had bragged to a cousin about her fresh haul. The officer flipped through the documents without much reaction, until he reached a photo of Olivia at a local bar, wearing my grandmother's pearl necklace. He let out a low whistle. "This is your husband's sister?" he asked. "Yes," I replied. "But that doesn't give her the right to take what isn't hers." He nodded. "You're absolutely right. Just be prepared. This could get complicated, especially if your husband sides with her." I told him I was ready for whatever came next. Within a week, Olivia was served a court summons for theft and possession of stolen property. When the officer handed her the papers, she reportedly laughed and said, "She's actually going through with this. How cute." But David didn't find it cute. Not this time. He stormed into my friend's apartment, where I'd been staying, his face red, hands shaking. "You really called the police on my sister?" he demanded. I stood firm. "She stole from me, and you laughed about it. You chose to defend her. She didn't mean any harm," he insisted. "She's family. We could have solved this privately." I looked him straight in the eyes. "I tried handling it privately. You turned it into a joke." He stood there, glancing around the apartment like it finally hit him, like he finally realized, I might not be coming back. "You're throwing away 10 years over a few necklaces." His words just hung there, heavy and cold. "They weren't just necklaces," I said quietly. "They were mine. They were memories, and you stood by while someone took them from me." He didn't say another word. A few days later, I received a text from an unknown number. "You're going to regret this. Just wait." No name, but I didn't need one. I knew it was Olivia. The court date was set for 3 weeks later. In the meantime, Olivia kept popping up around town, at the same brunch spot I liked, standing across the street from my gym, even accidentally bumping into me at the grocery store. She was always wearing something of mine, always smiling, like none of it could touch. But the real twist came when my bank called. Someone had tried to apply for a loan using my name. They had my social security number, my home address, even a copy of my driver's license. That's when I realized the situation had gone from bad to downright frightening. I went into full panic mode. Fraud alerts, frozen accounts, endless hours on the phone with banks and credit agencies. It was overwhelming. I couldn't sleep. I was missing work, and the stress started turning into chest pains. When I finally got hold of the application paperwork the scammer had submitted, I saw it. My ID, but with a slightly altered face photoshopped onto it. Not perfect, but close enough that an inattentive lender might not have noticed. Then I spotted something even more chilling. The address listed wasn't mine anymore. It was Olivia's. I stared at the page, numb. It wasn't just about the jewelry anymore. She was trying to steal my identity too. I handed all the documents over to the detective assigned to my case. He raised an eyebrow and said, "Looks like this just got a lot more serious." He asked if I wanted to press additional charges. My answer was clear. Yes, absolutely. David didn't show up to the next hearing. Later, through a mutual friend, I heard that he had moved out of our house and into a short-term rental. He apparently needed space. Since the fraud investigation began, he hadn't spoken a single word to me. Honestly, I was relieved. At this point, it wasn't just about stolen jewelry or broken trust. It was about standing up for myself, about justice, and I wasn't backing down. 2 days after filing the fraud report, the detective called again. His tone had changed. It was serious, almost grim. He told me that while they were looking into Olivia's activities, they uncovered something much bigger. My stolen jewelry and the identity fraud, just the beginning. It turned out Olivia was already under investigation for her role in a pawnshop scheme. She wasn't just taking things from me. She had been convincing people, mostly acquaintances from her social circle, to bring in second-hand jewelry and designer items to a certain shop. The store would pay them in cash, no questions asked, and Olivia would pocket a cut from each sale. Even worse, the shop owner had been laundering money for months, and my grandmother's pearl necklace, the one with the most sentimental value, had already been sold, gone. That hit harder than anything else. At that point, I didn't care about the money. That necklace was the last link I had to my grandmother, No court case could bring it back. The detective apologized, but explained that once an item passes through a few hands, it's usually impossible to recover, unless the buyer voluntarily returns it, which was unlikely. But the shocks weren't over. When David moved out, I thought it was to avoid the situation, but I was wrong. One evening, I drove past Olivia's apartment building, and saw his car parked outside. Same spot, 3 nights in a row. I couldn't believe it. I asked a friend, who lived nearby, to keep an eye out. 2 days later, she sent me a photo. David, walking out of Olivia's apartment, shirtless, carrying a laundry basket. It took a while for the truth to fully hit me. I hadn't just been betrayed by my husband. I hadn't just been stolen from by a family member. They were working together. Suddenly everything made sense. Why David laughed when I first showed him the camera footage. Why he kept defending Olivia. Why he didn't want me to press charges. Whether or not he physically took anything, he had helped her. And now, they were living under the same roof. I wanted to scream, but instead, I called my lawyer. We added new claims to the case. Conspiracy to commit fraud and misconduct involving marital assets. Then came the biggest twist. One afternoon, I found an anonymous letter in my mailbox. No return address, no signature, just a single photo inside. It showed Olivia, in my bedroom, wearing my jewelry, and based on the background, it had been taken before I even installed the hidden camera. On the back of the photo were 4 words: check the safe deposit. I wasn't sure if I should believe it, but curiosity got the better of me. I went to the bank where David and I had shared an account and asked whether he had opened a safe deposit box recently. The teller hesitated, then excused herself. About 10 minutes later, the bank manager came out. He couldn't reveal anything without a court order, but when I mentioned the letter, he gave me a knowing look and simply said, "You might want to speak to your lawyer." So I did. My lawyer helped me file for a subpoena. When the court approved it, the box was opened under official supervision. Inside, I found roughly half of my missing jewelry. Not all of it, and sadly, not the pearl necklace, but enough to prove that David wasn't just aware of the theft. He had been actively hiding the stolen items with Olivia. And sitting right on top of everything was a photo. David and Olivia, in our house, on our wedding anniversary, smiling, holding wine glasses, wearing my jewelry. I couldn't breathe. I had spent the last 10 years building a life with someone who silently stood by while his sister slowly tore my world apart. And the moment I finally stood up for myself, he ran straight to her. I thought things couldn't possibly get any worse. But I was wrong. A week later, David attempted to access one of our joint savings accounts, the same one I had already frozen. I received the security alert immediately. When I confronted him through my attorney, he claimed he was entitled to compensation for the emotional stress the situation had caused him. His exact words were, "It's not like she's gone, she gave it to Olivia, technically." I wanted to scream, to burn the world down. Instead, I doubled down. I expanded the case to include criminal charges, civil claims, and divorce proceedings. And this battle is far from over. Everything came to a head on a Thursday. Court sessions had been dragging on for weeks. Depositions, evidence reviews, and more of my missing jewelry turning up in places I never imagined. Some were found in safety deposit boxes, others in random storage units, and even inside a gym locker. The judge ordered a full forensic audit of both David's and Olivia's finances. Meanwhile, Olivia's involvement in the pawn shop scheme had unraveled into a complicated legal mess. The case had escalated, catching the attention of state authorities, and now a larger investigation was underway. But the real confrontation didn't happen in a courtroom. It happened in the last place I ever wanted to see either of them again, my own home. David still had a key. I hadn't changed the locks yet, a mistake on my part. One afternoon, I stopped by to collect a few final belongings. An old photo album, a box of books. I thought no one would be there, but I was wrong. They were both in the kitchen. Olivia, sitting at the counter like she owned the place, legs crossed, wearing one of my cardigans I hadn't even noticed was missing. David stood at the sink washing a glass, like nothing had ever happened. I froze. David was the first to turn around. "Hey," he said, like this was casual, like this was fine. Olivia looked up too, smiling, her teeth bared like a dare. "You're early." Something inside me broke. I walked straight to the living room, pulled the envelope I brought from my bag, and placed it on the counter. Inside were the final legal documents, divorce papers, additional charges, financial demands. I slapped it down in front of them. David didn't even look at it. He just shook his head. "You're really doing this? You broke into my life," I said, my voice shaking. "Both of you. You stole from me, lied to me, humiliated me, and you still think I'm the one going too far." Olivia laughed, sharp and cold. "God, you're so dramatic. They're just things." "No, they're not," I snapped. "They were mine. You paraded around in the last things I had from my grandmother. You forged my name. You used my social security number. You dragged my life through the mud, all while wearing my clothes and drinking from my wine glasses. Like some twisted role play." That was when David finally snapped. "You act like you're innocent, like you didn't let this happen. You let her stay here." And that was it. The moment everything inside me hardened. "I trusted you," I said, stepping forward. "I believed you when you said we were a team, and when your sister stole from me, you sided with her. You laughed in my face, and now you want to blame me for letting her in." The air went still. Olivia's smirk faded. David looked suddenly so small. "You let her take everything," I whispered, "but I'm taking it back now." His voice cracked. "You never really needed me, did you?" I didn't answer. Behind me the door stood wide open. I began gathering all the evidence, camera footage, receipts for the stolen jewelry, and every piece of correspondence I had with David and Olivia about the missing items. I documented every moment I caught Olivia wearing my jewelry, snapping photos when she wasn't looking. I also reached out to mutual friends and family members, subtly asking if Olivia had shown off any new jewelry lately. Several confirmed it, mentioning how she bragged about her upgraded collection. That only strengthened my case. With all the evidence in hand, I scheduled a meeting with my lawyer friend to discuss the next steps. I was determined to reclaim my belongings and hold Olivia accountable. The next day, I filed a police report. I brought everything: receipts, screenshots from the security footage, even printed text messages, where Olivia bragged to a cousin about her fresh haul. The officer flipped through it all, expressionless, until he reached the photo of Olivia wearing my grandmother's pearl necklace at a local bar. He gave a low whistle. "This your husband's sister?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "But that doesn't mean she can rob me." He nodded. "You're not wrong, but this could get messy, especially if your husband defends her." I looked him straight in the eye. "I'm ready for mess." Within a week, Olivia was served with a court summons for theft and possession of stolen property. When the officer handed her the papers, she apparently laughed and said, "She's actually doing this. Cute." David wasn't laughing this time. He stormed into the apartment I'd been staying at, red-faced and shaking. "You called the cops on my sister," he snapped. "She stole from me. You laughed at my face. You chose her," I shot back. "She didn't mean any harm. It's family. We can work this out privately." I stared at him. "I tried. You made a joke of it." He looked around the apartment like he was realizing, for the first time, I might not be coming back. "You're throwing away 10 years over some necklaces." I let the words hang in the air. "They weren't just necklaces," I said quietly. "They were mine. They were memories, and you stood by while someone stripped them off me." He had no answer for that. A few days later, I got a text from an unknown number. "You're going to regret this. Just no name, but I knew who it was from. Olivia." The court date was set for 3 weeks out. Meanwhile, Olivia kept popping up around town. The same brunch spots, across the street from my gym, even accidentally bumping into me at the grocery store, always wearing something of mine, always smiling, like she was untouchable. But the twist came when my bank called. Someone had tried to use my identity to apply for a loan. They had my social security number, my address, even a copy of my driver's license. Just like that, the situation went from bad to terrifying. I went into full panic mode. Fraud alerts, frozen accounts, endless hours on the phone with banks and credit agencies. I was losing sleep, missing work, and the stress was turning into chest pain. When I finally got my hands on the application paperwork, there it was, my ID, but with a slightly altered face photoshopped in. Not perfect, but close enough for a lazy lender to miss. And the address listed wasn't mine anymore. It was Olivia's. I handed everything over to the detective. He raised an eyebrow. "Looks like this just became a lot more serious." He asked if I wanted to press additional charges. I didn't hesitate. "Yes, absolutely." David didn't show up for the next hearing. Through a mutual friend, I found out he'd moved out of our house and into a short-term rental. Said he needed space.
He hasn't spoken to me since the fraud investigation started. Good. Because now it wasn't just about stolen gold or betrayal, it was about justice, and I wasn't backing down. 2 days after the fraud report was filed, the detective called again, his tone different this time. There's something else, he said. While digging into Olivia's activity, they discovered that my case was just the tip of the iceberg. She was already under investigation for her role in a pawnshop scam, recruiting people, mostly friends from her nightlife crowd, to sell gently used jewelry and designer items for cash. The shop would pay out, no questions asked, and Olivia got a cut of every sale. My grandmother's pearl necklace, long gone, sold, untraceable, that hit harder than anything. It wasn't even about the money. That necklace was my last connection to my grandmother, and no court ruling could bring it back. And just when I thought the betrayal couldn't cut deeper, I found out David hadn't moved out to clear his head. He'd moved in with Olivia. I drove past her building, and saw his car parked there 3 nights in a row. I asked a friend who lived in the same complex to watch. 2 days later, she sent me a photo. David, walking out of Olivia's apartment, shirtless, carrying a laundry basket. I wasn't just robbed. I wasn't just betrayed. They were in it together. Everything made sense. His laughter, his defenses, the delay tactic. He might not have physically stolen the jewelry, but he'd helped her cover it up. He enabled it. I called my lawyer. We added conspiracy to defraud and marital asset misconduct to the lawsuit. And then out of nowhere, I got an anonymous letter. No name, no return address. Inside, a single photo. Olivia, in my bedroom, wearing my jewelry. On the back, scrawled in messy handwriting, check the safe deposit box. I almost didn't follow through, but curiosity got the better of me. David and I had never had a joint safe deposit box, or so I thought, but when I went to the bank, the teller's hesitation confirmed it. After getting a court order, the safe deposit box was opened. Inside was roughly half of my stolen jewelry. Not all of it, and not the pearl necklace, but enough to prove David had known all along. Sitting on top was a printed photo. David and Olivia, in my house, on our wedding anniversary, smiling, holding wine glasses, wearing my jewelry. I couldn't breathe. 10 years, building a life with someone who stood silent while his sister dismantled mine. And the second I stood up for myself, he ran straight to her. A week later, David even tried to access one of our joint savings accounts, one I'd already frozen. When my lawyer confronted him, he claimed he deserved compensation for the stress this had caused. It's not like she's dead, he said. She gave it to Olivia. Technically, I wanted to burn the world down. Instead, I doubled the lawsuit. Criminal, civil, divorce. Court dragged on for weeks. More jewelry was recovered from places I didn't even know David had access to. Storage units, gym lockers, safety deposit boxes. The judge ordered a full forensic audit on both Olivia and David's finances. Olivia's pawnshop scam exploded into a web of legal trouble, and the state got involved. But the real confrontation didn't happen in court. It happened in my own home. I came back one afternoon to pick up a few things. A photo album, a box of books. I thought the house would be empty, but it wasn't. Olivia was in the kitchen, sitting on the counter, wearing a cardigan of mine I hadn't even realized was missing. David was at the sink, washing a glass like nothing had happened. I froze. David looked up. Hey, he said casually, like this was normal. Olivia smirked. You're early. Something inside me broke. I pulled out the envelope with the final legal documents, divorce papers, additional charges, financial demands. I slapped it onto the counter. David just shook his head. You're really doing this? You broke into my life, I said, my voice shaking. You stole from me, lied to me, humiliated me, and you think I'm the one going too far? Olivia laughed. God, you're so dramatic. They're just things. No, I snapped. They were mine. You paraded around in the last things I had from my grandmother. You forged my name. You used my social security number. You dragged my life through the mud while wearing my clothes and drinking from my wine glasses. Like some twisted role play. David finally snapped. You act like you're innocent. Like you didn't let this happen. You let her stay here. I trusted you. I believed you when you said we were a team, and when your sister stole from me, you sided with her. You laughed at my face, and now you want to blame me for letting her in? The air was heavy. Olivia's smirk vanished. David looked suddenly very small. You let her take everything, I whispered. But I'm taking it back. David's voice cracked. You never really needed me, did you? I didn't answer. Just then, my lawyer arrived. Olivia tossed the cardigan onto the floor on her way out, muttering, "You always thought you were better than me." David didn't say a word. The court ruled in my favor. Olivia was ordered to pay restitution, though I doubt I'll ever see a dime. David's assets were split, but by the time the proceedings started, Olivia had already cleaned him out too. Poetic justice, I guess. Some friends pulled back, unsure how to react. Others showed up with wine, food, and company. One neighbor, Miss Caril, a 70-year-old widow, knocked on my door with a casserole. "I always thought something was off about that sister of his," she said softly. "And him too. You deserved better, sweetheart." I didn't cry until she left. The house is mine again. Quiet. Sometimes too quiet, but peaceful. I keep a photo of my grandmother on my nightstand, beside a single earring, the match to the one Olivia sold. It's all I have left of that set, but it's enough. The betrayal still echoes sometimes. When I pass jewelry store windows, I feel that sharp flash of anger. Other days, I just feel hollow. I lost my marriage. I lost my trust. But I found my voice, and I'm still standing. Maybe not hopeful yet, not healed, but no longer fooled, no longer small, just a